everyone. Welcome to One More Page, the virtual event space. I'm Amanda. I'll be your host for this evening, afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in. We're all over the place here, and we're excited about it, but we're mostly excited to be here to host the launch for Alechia Dow and her new book, The Kindred. Congratulations, Alechia. Happy launch day.
Yay.
Thank you.
Are we excited? Are we feeling good? We've got a book in the world. We're crushing it.
I'm nervous.
That's honest, and I appreciate that.
Yes, truly.
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
you're speaking truth to what all authors actually feel when they're asked that question. We're all like, "Oh yeah, it's great," but inside we're kind of dying a little bit.
Yeah, normally you can only see it in the eyes, so I appreciate that you said it out loud too. And then joining Alechia today, we have the amazing Andrea Tang, who's going to be chatting with her and asking her some questions. I assume complimenting her excessively, that sort of thing.
Fangirling,
Before, yeah.
what I usually do when I'm talking about anything that Alechia has created, whether it's stories or your incredible baked goods.
Yeah, I was very sad for a lot of reasons that we could not do this event in person, but I was most sad that I didn't get a cookie of some sort.
That was a plan of mine. I was prepared.
I mean, I was looking forward to your in-person friendship as well, for sure. That was number one, but a real close, like 1.3 was some baked goods. But I'm glad we're all being safe. Everyone out there watching, I hope you're all being safe as well. But I know you're not here to hear me babble on, so I will introduce our lovely authors, and then I will get out of your hair, and we can hear all about the Kindred. So we'll start with our in conversationalist today. Andrea Tang grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, and currently resides in DC, where she pens fiction by night and collects geopolitical gossip by day. A graduate of Bryn Mawr and the University of Oxford, she's also a perpetually recovering theater kid, Fulbright grantee, 4 pentathlete, Taekwondo black belt, and a serial dabbler in various martial and movement arts. Honestly, she's like a super freak athlete. Ask her about her various martial techniques.
I think I just listed every hobby that I had because I didn't want to sound like the only thing I did was sit around and write.
You succeeded very effectively. And she's the author of the absolutely amazing books Rebel Wing and Renegade Flight. So hello, welcome, Andrea.
Good to be here.
And then, of course, we have the person of the hour. Alechia Dow is a former pastry chef and librarian. When not writing, you can find her having epic dance parties with her daughter, baking, reading, or having teeny adventures, which I like as a nice concept. It's like a micro adventure, like a taste of adventure. And she's the author of the amazing books The Sound of Stars and The Kindred. She is coming to us live from Germany. Everyone, welcome Alechia Dow.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Welcome to my dining room, which is my living room, which is also the library. It's everything. It's 11 o'clock. It is dark, and I'm going to talk about my books. It's really exciting. And I get to talk with Andrea, and I'm so excited. And also Amanda, who is an author and coming out with a book this year. So that's really cool.
Stop it. Thanks, guys. So like I said, I'll get out of here. Just a quick thing for you guys to keep an eye on. For our wonderful audience members, feel free to post comments wherever you're watching. If you have questions, we'll be doing a Q&A at the end. Feel free to post them as you're thinking of them, though, and I'll keep an eye on those so that I can pull them for the end. I'll also make sure to post the link to buy the books in the comments. Buy their books. We've got signed copies of Andrea's books. We're doing signed book plates for Alechia. They're very good books. I very much enjoy them, so you should buy them. All right, y'all good?
Thank you, Amanda. You were
on the other side.
Alechia, thank you so much for joining me. I've been so excited to talk to you for so long. Ever since we did our first virtual event, which I think was the YA science fiction panel with Alechia Dow, who's fantastic. You just I don't know, you were so smart and so articulate, and you had so many cool things to say about storytelling in general. So I'm really excited to chat with you about your book, which I recently read. So one of the first things that jumped out at me about The Kindred as a reader and a big fan of The Sound of Stars, your first book, was the fact that you are a dual POV master. You've got this real knack for having two protagonists with extremely different circumstances and personalities share a story. And I've seen you do this not once but twice now, where you alter where you kind of introduce the readers to their world, but you're also able to shift perspective in this very seamless way so that it's equally it really is like a two protagonist story, which is like hard to pull off, I think, especially with like YA conventions being what they are. What, as an author myself, what are your secrets? How do you do it?
That is my absolute favorite way to write. And I think it's because I really enjoy getting into the heads of each character and what shapes them and what they're thinking about when they're doing the things and what kind of how they're going to respond to each thing that's thrown their way. And I really want to think that through each time I'm doing it. And I don't know if that's like super clever, but it just
feels
seems
really
like
clever to me personally.
It's like supernatural for me with The Sound of Stars. It was that I did first person for Ellie and I did third person for Morris because I really wanted you to feel that kind of difference between a human and an alien. But with the Kindred, they're both aliens. So they're both going to be on the same kind of wavelength. They're both going to have, and they're also communicating with each other mentally. So I was like, I'm going to do it both this way and we're going to see how well I do it. I love
fantastically. I really loved them. Like, I think they both had just like, they had such vivid voices on the page. I fell in love with Felix immediately. Like, what a sweet disaster boy. He's just like, yeah, I think like one of my favorite sort of like character defining moments for him is like when they're like in this like high stakes situation. I'm not gonna like get into spoilers, but they're in this very high stakes situation. They're like on the run, they're in the spaceship, and like his spaceship has like a sexy intercom, and like Joy just like gives him this look like, what is that? He's like, she came that way. What a trash prince. I love a good trash prince. Like
he clearly does not have himself together, right. And it's not the right response for the situation, and I really enjoyed him.
Because he really is, but
yeah, he's grumpy, he's disastrous, he's like,
he really I love this thing. Run away and be like a pop rock musician.
He wants zero responsibility. He just wants to live his good life.
Right, which I think all of us can relate to some extent, especially for these past couple years.
Right.
Oh gosh, seriously. But yeah, so like, I don't know. I thought also like as somebody who did like a companion novel set in the same world as my own debut, I thought it was really cool how you almost kind of did that here as well, because like I don't think I even realized immediately that the Kindred shares a universe with Sound of Stars, and then I saw the Ilori name dropped and I was like, I remember them. This is so exciting. So it was really cool just kind of getting to see this expanded galaxy almost. And I also like, I feel like you also do another thing that's kind of unique for speculative YA, which is that like a lot of like, think like the big books in our category are either like just contemporary YA, just urban fantasy, or just like high fantasy, high tech stuff. Whereas you have like, you kind of created this space opera world where we start out in this like other universe planet with its own kind of social systems, and then you take them to Earth, what is ostensibly kind of like a modern day-ish Earth, and like you have characters from both of those worlds mix. So how do you kind of, I don't know, how do you balance the world building in that way? Because I thought that was really cool and really unique.
I don't know if I did. I mean, I think first I have.
I think you're too humble. Every time I'm like, you did this really cool thing, you're like, did I?
I have really great editors that helped, and I also have really great critique partners and friends who help me. I know when I started off with the series that I wanted to have it somewhat Earth-based, because then it kind of creates like this accessibility in sci-fi, which I think there's this little line that you don't want to cross in sci-fi where it's either too sci-fi and you kind of don't get the readers who are intimidated by sci-fi, or you go too contemporary and then the sci-fi readers are like,
yeah, this isn't real sci-fi.
You have to really think about how accessible it's going to be and how much you can put in without it being too much. So when it comes to like creating worlds, I have an absolute ball every single time. I love it. It's my favorite thing. When it comes to Earth, there are set rules, there are set limits. I know what we're going to do, and I get to approach that in a way of with these two characters who are already from way outside of that, and then kind of looking at how they would approach Earth and how they're like, okay, these are the rules of Earth. That's nonsensical, and I don't like it. So it kind of creates this kind of humor where aliens are like, why do they have pets? Why do they do this? Why?
Right. Yeah, and
It's a lot of fun.
and I feel like that really comes through in your writing as well. And I think and it's so cool because it's almost like a reverse Portal story in some ways, because usually you have people from our world going off to explore like alien worlds or fantasy worlds. And here you do the exact opposite, which I personally I don't think I've seen that done before. So I was like, oh, this is a really fun trope reversal.
Just imagine if it was like Star Wars and then Luke Skywalker goes to Earth and he's like, what? You know, like you don't have Jedi, you don't have lightsaber. What is this? So I think it would be really, really fun to look at it. And I had fun doing that. And I love kind of throwing a whole bunch in there and then being like, let's scale it back.
Right.
And let's build it back up again, because now you know where they're from and now you know where they're going. So it's like, I hope that it kind of resonates with readers, and I hope it makes them feel like they can relate.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's super, super cool. But I guess kind of springboarding off of that discussion point too, you do this obviously arguably more explicitly in some ways in Sound of Stars, but you have this way of also taking kind of our contemporary Earth-based issues and recreating them, not beat by beat, but in really recognizable ways with your with the way that you world build for your aliens. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, what motivates that, how you go about doing it?
I think sci-fi at its best, and I know you know what I'm talking about, it's you get to explore the things that in such new ways that hopefully kind of resonate again with readers, but also gives them hope and shows it in a totally different perspective. I love the idea of future civilizations in different worlds, kind of being technologically advanced, doing all these new things and having everything great, but then still struggling with these little key
classism, racism, it's definitely still things.
It's a nice idea, and I think I had one agent tell me once, if you can create all of this, why would you focus on any of the issues that we have here? If you can create it all, you can make it all good. I don't think it's realistic.
Yeah.
I love the idea of it, but I don't think it's realistic. I think when you have everything, you'll still have problems.
Yeah.
Maybe that's pessimistic for me, but I love to explore the things that we experience in new ways, and I love to look at it as an outsider, and I think that probably has a lot to do with me living in Germany as a Black American woman.
Right.
I love looking at something as an outsider and being like, okay, they have these issues, but we have ours too. So it's not like we're perfect. And I love to kind of look at that. And I think for me, when I go into it, it's about teen readers. I really am considering what they are going through and how I might shine a light on it, or how I might kind of relate it to them. And, because we write for teens and they are extremely smart. They are extremely opinionated, and for good reasons. And you want to show them being smart and having opinions and being like, okay, let's see what you think of this. What would your solution be? I think with The Sound of Stars, it was Ellie has had so many bad experiences, and then they're like, well, you can save Earth, and she's like, but why would I do that?
Right, this is kind of a shitty backwater planet.
I mean, I'm not she's not all for the end of Earth and humanity, of course not, but she's also like, but why should I really be into saving humanity?
Right. Why is this constantly my job? Why am I constantly picking up after everyone around me? I've been doing this my whole life.
Yeah, I don't really want to do that, Right. And then you have with Joy and Felix, it's they have their own issues. They have classism, they have their racism, they have colonialism, they have it all. And, it's really rough. But then they go to Earth and they're like, oh, this isn't just all of those things. It's even more to the surface. Like, and it feels even more intense. So it's interesting to kind of look at it that way. And I think for teens reading it, they would be like, oh, wow, yeah, I never really thought about it that way. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe it'll resonate. Maybe it'll be like, well, that's funny. I don't know. I have no idea.
But I don't know.
wanted to do that.
No, I think you're right. And I think we kind of talked about this when we did the sci-fi panel way back when, but I feel like science fiction at its best really does kind of shine a light on the world that we have now, even though we are writing about future or past or alternate worlds. It's always going to be a reflection of our own experiences. And like, to your point, speaking about being like a Black American woman living in Germany right now with a German partner, like I feel like it makes perfect sense that a lot of your work would center on how to kind of navigate the politics of being the outsider and how how to find a home essentially among strangers.
It helps that that's in my mind a lot. So it makes sense that it would come up. I was talking to Steve Dunk the other day for a podcast, and he brought up that Joy is, what she goes through and how her life so far. And he's like, what were you thinking about that when you were doing it? And I was like, no. But afterwards, now that you're mentioning it, wow, I had no idea. I was right,
like
work. I had no idea.
Yeah, you're processing something and you don't even realize it until it like winds up on the
I had no idea I was doing that. Joy in the book is like, she wants to be dutiful. She wants to be loyal to her planet, and she loves her traditions and she loves her religion. She doesn't always agree with it, and she knows that there's a fine line between believing in something and having faith in it to being completely overzealous with it. And there's a reason why that is happening in her home world, which you'd have to read to find out. But she feels like she can't live her dreams in a way, because if she does, then it means she's not doing right by her community.
Right. Yeah. Up to it, including like her own sort of like personal freedoms and things like, okay, I don't think this counts as a spoiler because it's introduced really early on in the book, but like her shitty fiance, like he's just kind of like, oh, well, I guess I'm stuck with this dude. I like zero things about him, but it just is what it is.
It is what it is. And she's just kind of accepted this unhappily, but she's going to accept it and she's going to do her best anyway.
Right.
And I had no idea that I was like kind of doing what I was like when I was a teen, where I was like, oh, okay, I come from a really poor background in Massachusetts. Like, we were on Salvation Army. We did all of these things. We were food pantry food, all of this. And it felt like if you don't go to school, if you don't do well and you don't achieve a lot, you're going to let your family down and let your community down. So you need to be the best you can be. And that is Joy. That is Joy, where she's like, I've got to do all of these things to be right by my community and my world. And I didn't know I was doing that. So it's like, it's really weird that was in my head and I was writing it and it made total sense to me, but I didn't know I had done it until I was talking about it. And I was like, oh, wow.
No, and like, yeah, and you've done such a good job of just recreating that really fraught sense of like almost living on borrowed time, where you constantly feel like you're like one mistake away from just like screwing up everything for like yourself, your family, their expectations of you, which I think like, yeah, like again, like sounds very akin to your own experiences coming from like that kind of background.
But you don't know what you're doing. You don't like, it wasn't at the top of my brain when I was doing it like that. It made total sense afterwards, but I'm happy I did it. I think a lot of people could resonate with that. It would resonate with them. And I think they can relate to it. That kind of pressure, that kind of accepting that your dreams might not come true.
Right. Yeah. Because I think a lot of, I mean, like, especially like kind of like our target age demographic, like teen readers who are sort of like, who are like coming out of childhood and sort of like on that brink of adulthood where you're starting to assume more responsibilities in life, but you're also kind of new to navigating the adult world. And like you put, I don't know, at least I don't want to speak for everybody. I know that I was definitely this way as a teen, where you just like, you put so much pressure on yourself to grow up so quickly and to be an adult so soon. And like, and I really felt that because like Joy is such a duty bound character. And she puts so much onus on herself to always do the right thing, to make everyone else happy, and to like please the adults in her life. And I think that is something that will speak to like a lot of teens who like, you know, like I feel like as teens, like we had all these people that we had to do right by. Like we had teachers, we had parents, we had authority figures, and like, and I think that is kind of Joy's quintessential experience almost.
And it's also an issue of tension with her and Felix, because he doesn't feel that.
Right, yeah. I mean, I loved and hated that about him. Like, it was just like, he was such a cathartic character in some ways, because he's not like that at all. But at the same time, it's like, oh, you fucker. Like,
he doesn't feel that need to like,
right,
to do that for his community or anything. And if he does, it's very, I don't think I'm the right person for it, so it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, and I like that she's not afraid to kind of take him to task. I mean, I guess it like comes of the fact that they've known each other for so long as well, which I also want to get into. But like, it was great seeing that on page too, because like I don't know, like he is this really, you know, suave, charming, handsome YA love interest character, but he also gets called out on his bullshit. Like,
yeah, I think he starts to realize his own issues like as he spends more time with Joy. And I think having her in his head is really good for him. Just like having him in her head is and her head is really good for her because it kind of lets her loosen up a little, and it makes him a little, oh, okay, I don't really, maybe I shouldn't be this way.
right.
And when you're in person and then she's, you know, no, this isn't gonna fly. He has to really take that in and work in it. You know, he has to really stew in that for a bit and go, okay, I have to do better.
Right. Yeah.
And it's great.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And there's also like a difference, I think, in the closeness that develops between them when they're like stuck together physically and like seeing each other all the time versus even when they were just like in each other's minds and kind of psychically linked. And so like, I don't know, I feel like that was a really interesting aspect of their relationship development to navigate as well.
I think, yeah, because she can kind of tune him out, and he could, you know, and he was like, well, she's gone, so no one's going to tell me what I can do, so it's fine. But in person, she can't tune him out, and he can't tune her out either. He can't just do what he wants. There's no escape for him. He has to deal with that. And I think it makes him, I think he's always been a good person. I think it makes him a better person to realize that he actually has to commit to things, and he has to take responsibility for his actions and, you know, for what he wants in the world as well.
Right. No, absolutely. And like, I don't know, this kind of circles back to one of the points we were discussing earlier with like kind of making the personal political and the political personal. I've noticed that with both Sound of Stars and with the Kindred, you like one recurring world building element that I think is super fun is that you do deal a lot with, I guess, like the agency of the mind, so to speak, because like in Sound of Stars, we're living in a world where Earth has essentially been colonized by people who can like kind of like have their way with your brain. And then in the plot of the Kindred, you have the Kindred program, where you have somebody who is your pair bond, who is linked to you from the beginning. It's almost like having a soulmate. It's sometimes a romantic bond, but not always. But either way, you grow up with somebody in your head, like essentially from birth. And so that also kind of gets into the idea of kind of like psychological agency as well, but from a very different angle. Was that something that you like consciously set out to do? Or was it another one of those things where like, you kind of like you were writing and like you were talking about it, and then at some point you're like, oh wow, I really did do that, didn't I? Like,
I love the idea that your brain is a power, right? And the Alluri can shut it off because they have this ability to just shut it off. But with the Kindred, it's not about shutting it off. It's about connecting it. It's about connecting those two different powers together. And love the idea of it, and I think it could be both really great and really terrible. Um, and it's with I think in the Sound of Stars, there's Illicom, right? They're all connected through Illicom, where they can have whole conversations and meetings in their heads.
Right. Yeah. There's a
Yeah.
psychic connection there as well, but it's so much less like
Yeah.
warm, intimate.
There's no warmth. It's all cold. It's all directives. It's all
Right.
and
It's like there's a completely different
yeah.
culture built around the exact same trope. Like
I think with the Sound of Stars, it's especially with Illicom, it's for the lab mates, it was the taking. They take their energy that way. That's how true Lori survive, is by taking that energy. And with the Kindred, it's about giving. And
really
it's very different. And
yeah.
I don't know if like it makes a lot of sense in that way, but I love the idea that it's like there's a bridge there, but in the Sound of Stars there isn't.
Right.
There's just like a pyramid of I'm taking from you, I'm telling you what to do. And if you don't do what I want, I can shut you down.
Right. And it's very coldly functional. But yeah,
and you can't do that with the Kindred. You cannot do that.
No, not at all. Like for a number of reasons. And like, I don't know, I just like, I really love that you took that concept and did incredibly different things with that. That same trope, that same idea in two different books. And I think it also kind of reflects like the social issues we were discussing earlier. Cause like, as you say, the mind is kind of your superpower, right? And so much of like our sense of self is wrapped up in our own heads. And like, because you do so much work on that kind of like, I guess, like the speculative side of the psychological, I think that inevitably does kind of serve almost as a reflection of like the social issues that get integrated into the plot as well, because both of these books kind of deal with fundamental inequities and inequalities in the societies that you've built. And like a huge part of navigating inequality is the question of agency, and what greater form of agency is there than like independent thought and action and all of that. So yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. As you can tell, I'm like kind of going on a bit. Like I have a lot of feelings about your world building.
I mean, it's every time I write, especially within sci-fi, it's like, okay, how do I do this in a way that's going to make a lot of sense to people reading it, and it's going to be enjoyable, but also there's that element of horror. There's a psychological horror there where you could be paired with somebody who could be the exact opposite of you in every possible way. And then you have to think, well, would they though? Because you are shaping each other. If you are paired from birth, you're going to shape each other. And the reason I came up with it was because I thought about loneliness. I think I was watching something really late at night once, and it was like, loneliness is an epidemic, and that was before there was the epidemic.
A literal epidemic of literal loneliness.
Yeah. But like, I thought, imagine like if you were never truly alone in the way that you were sharing your thoughts, and you could see what another person saw, and you could have like this constant back and forth with somebody else, and you wouldn't have to be in a totally different place.
Yeah.
Like that I don't know if it's good or bad, but I love the idea that you are not alone. And that's like really in your face. You are not alone. You are sharing an actual mind with somebody else.
Right. Like you're never just in your own head, really.
But I do always think about loneliness. And I think, first, again, I am a Black lady in Germany in a small village, and I do not have like friends in person here. So it can be lonely. And I thought about, I like imagine that, how different that would be. Imagine if you had always had that, and how different that would be on your development as a person.
Right, if that had always been normalized for you. Because I think often when we think about the trope of psychic connection in like speculative fiction, it's like, oh, what if this were suddenly thrust upon you? And we're like, oh, but privacy. And like, I don't want people to know that I'm thinking about that. But like, if you grow up with it though, like if this has just always been a normal part of your life, then that kind of changes in all likelihood how you would look at it, right? Like, yeah.
So I love the idea of it. And I think if you were a kindred right from the beginning, would you actually know loneliness in a way? Would you know it?
That's a good question.
And I mean, I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I think it would depend on the person and the character, but I think when you have somebody else in your mind and they can't really judge you, I mean, they could, but why would they? It'd be like judging themselves.
It's kind of literal like glass houses situation.
Yeah.
Like
they share your secrets, they share all of your memories, they share your experiences. Imagine that, like, imagine how good that could be if you're not thinking in a horror term, which it could be bad. If you're thinking about it in a
you're sharing your head with, yeah.
Because what if you don't want to share all these things?
Right.
Else, you know? But I love the idea of it, and it was really central to the Kindred is this idea of loneliness, but this idea of connections. And I think The Sound of Stars is also about connecting. And that's really the kind of themes I stick with is, mind, connections, and music and stories.
Yeah, I was about to say also just like really great music. Like I don't know, when I read your books, I always like to listen to like a little like David Bowie in the background. Like just like any kind of like, I don't know, I feel like your books are sort of like glam rock vibes. Like there's something like really like fun and spunky about them, but also just like fundamentally uplifting.
I think music is that another great connector where it's universal and people like music.
Right.
And it would make sense that aliens do too.
Right. I mean, that's what starts Morris's whole plot in your first book. I know we're talking about the second one right now, but also I just like loved that whole concept that there's this like lonely alien boy who just wants to listen to.
He just wants his music.
Yeah.
He loves it. He's super emotional. He's super into it.
Right. And Felix is too, like in a different way, like where he just like wants to like run away and play in a band because that's what makes
he loves expressing himself. He wants to be perceived in his musical way. But he is also extremely shy from time to time, and also, he struggles with how to represent himself. Whereas Joy is less so. So it's really, they kind of complement each other that way.
Right. Yeah. She almost, despite like her being a much more like kind of like typically like muted, reserved character, it's like, I don't know, I almost got the sense that she knows who she is more than he does. Like she has a more developed sense of self almost as a result of being this very kind of like duty bound character.
Yeah, I mean, she does though. She knows what she likes. She is open to new experience. She is a lot more sunshine than any of the other characters I've written.
Right. She's definitely like, she seems like, despite some like her life not being great in some ways, she definitely seems happier than your first protagonist, Ellie. He was just going through so much.
Ellie was like, poor Ellie, she just loses everything.
Like a good therapist. I mean, everyone in that book does, but like especially Ellie, I think.
She wants good things.
Yeah.
But she's had too much she had way too many bad things. And Joy has had a lot of experiences that haven't been great. But she kind of puts herself in this mindset of like, but it can be better.
Right.
Maybe I won't get to live my dreams, but maybe things will be better for everybody else.
She's very like stubbornly yet sensibly optimistic. Like you don't get the sense that she's like, oh, la, 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 head in the clouds, like maybe yada yada. But like you do get the sense that she's like, okay, well, life is life, and you don't always get what you want, but that doesn't mean you have to be unhappy. Like, and she throws some of that over to Felix as well when she's trying to get him to like get his crap together.
Yeah, and he's kind of like, what? You don't get what you want?
Right? He was like, I've always gotten what I wanted. This is such an alien concept.
That's not fair. But that's why they work. That's why it's really fun writing those two characters because they do complement each other in that way. And it's great to have somebody who, can be like, no, you actually have to, you actually have to care about other people and you actually have to, do things you don't want to do. And I'm sorry, but that's true.
That's life, man. So as their author, did you ever think about what Joy and Felix would have been like had they not been kind of bonded since birth? Like, how would they have developed if they didn't have each other in their respective heads? Or would they just be completely different people, you think?
I think Joy would be, I do think they would be very similar to who they already are. Joy might be a little less creative, and Felix might be a little less shy, weirdly, because one of the reasons he struggles is because he knows that Joy is watching. And he's like, oh my God, Joy's watching.
He doesn't care about anyone's opinion except hers.
Except hers. He's like,
she's the only one who matters.
So they might be the same, but they might be a little more, in the opposite directions.
Right.
Where Joy might really go into completely being loyal and dutiful and all those things. And Felix might be like, I don't care about anyone at all. Which would be bad.
Right, yeah. He might actually be like dead on the like spoiled prince archetype instead of just this kind of charming deconstruction of a spoiled prince. So I have to ask this one just because like I'm a sucker for a good crossover, which was like why the fact that this is technically a Sound of Stars crossover just like warmed my little nerd heart. But like theoretically, if you were to take like, so if Felix, Joy, Ellie, and Morris were to go out on a good old-fashioned teen double date, what do you think would happen? Like, how do you think the four of them would get along on like a group date?
I think Ellie and Joy would like each other, although Ellie would think she's incredibly naive. And I think Felix would hate Morris. They would hate each other.
Like, a soft boy.
He's so soft and he's so like,
he's so gentle and earnest. How can anyone hate Morris?
He just tells you how he feels and he's like, I love life, and we have so many opportunities, and he's just like really optimistic, I think, despite it all. And Felix would be like,
You're annoying now.
No, that's not how anything works. People are terrible and everything in the world is terrible. So no.
Does that mean that you get along better with Ellie then, potentially?
He might get really he might get better.
Felix and Ellie actually kind of hitting it off and like being bros because they're both kind of like pessimistic and grumpy.
But she might be hating him for like already because he has it all. He has everything.
Yeah, he is like a spoiled rich boy.
I mean, he doesn't have to face a lot of the things that other characters do just because of his family name.
Right.
So I think it would be a very interesting date. As long as there's good food, they'd be fine. But if they had
to be a date to like a Michelin-starred restaurant.
Right.
It would have to be a date where they like the dessert is something that like you, Alechia, their creator, personally created just to like because you know exactly what they like. You probably know exactly how to make it like even better than the best version that they've had. So like you would have to basically like sponsor their group date in order to ensure that like
I would do that for them. For them, I would do it.
Right. Out of curiosity, on this theoretical date, what are the desserts that the four of them would order?
Oh no, that's I think
a curveball there.
If you ever read the Kindred, Joy loves cake. She loves it. She loves her sweets. She loves fruit. So she would have some kind of really delicious molded, probably strawberry or raspberry tort with like a really fluffy vanilla and something sharp like a citrus miracles or something on top, and it would be really delicious. I think Ellie would go straight for like a donut because that's what she loves.
Hey, don't fix it if it ain't broke. A classic donut is fantastic.
Yeah, and Felix would eat whatever Joy eats because he's like, oh, I have to eat what she eats because she always picks the things. And Morris would be like loving it all.
He's like, wow, human food, amazing.
Maybe he would eat like a cinnamon
cool and creative.
He might just be like
tasty things and good music.
I think
I almost feel like, in the same way that I feel like God, Ellie and Felix would get on. I almost feel as though Morris and Joy would be like really sweet if they met as well, just because they're both such like in very different ways, kind of like sweet, optimistic characters.
Yeah, they would. I think they really would. Their loyalties are different. She's loyal to where she's from, and he is not.
He is not.
So,
Understandably, where he's from kind of sucks.
No, but I think that's what makes them so interesting. And if they ever met, not that I'm saying they will or that they might not, I think it would be really interesting to see them together in a book or something.
I think you need to do a short story about this group date now that I've spoken it into being, and they need to have
maybe
really good desserts and really good music. That might be one way to get Felix and Morris to get along, actually, is the topic of music. Because I bet Morris would be like, Felix, your music is amazing. Like, I think
he loves everything.
You can make it.
Like, wow.
Welcome back, Amanda.
You're on mute.
Every time I'm muted, so you don't hear my weird cat background noise that I immediately forget. I've got some questions from the audience. If y'all want to, hear those.
Do it. All right.
Awesome. So our first is from Emily Katzenberger. Hi, Emily. Emily says, Alicia, will all of your books feature Black plus-size demigirls? Please say yes, because I absolutely love the representation and can't get enough of it.
Yes.
So now you have to. So.
Well, now that the pressure's on, Alicia.
But yes, it's definitely the truth. Yeah, I always do. I feel like that's an underrepresented demographic, and that is my identity. So it makes total sense that I would do that, and I feel really comfortable doing that, and I enjoy it every time. So yes.
Love it. Next question is from Natalia. And this one, I thought about answering this in the comments, but I wanted Alicia to hear from you specifically. They say I have a question. I have a friend who has a child who just turned 12, loves Harry Potter, Rick Riordan. Would this be good for her? So do you think that Kindred can kind of appeal across the sort of upper and lower YA age range?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I would say like that's if they don't mind some romance, because there is romance, but there's romance in Harry Potter and Rick Riordan. So like,
yeah,
they're getting those.
If they don't mind romance, I don't know. It really depends on what they're interested in. I mean, it's a sci-fi fantasy, so it would work, and it is accessible, I think. But it would have to be, something they're interested in. If they've never read sci-fi before and they don't want new worlds, then it would be like, okay, maybe we'll ease into that later.
My idea is, Natalie, I think you should buy it. I think you should read it, buy 3 or 4, read it first, and then give it to every child you've ever met, probably, just to be safe and cover.
This is like a sample size,
Exactly.
You want to be scientifically, we promote scientific integrity here at One More Page.
Exactly. Just because science fiction does not mean that the scientific method is forgotten about. So.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better.
Thank you. And then while you're at it, just buy Andrea's books too. Another question from Emily, and I really like this one. Emily says, how do you balance realistic aspects of the story, such as including COVID in the Kindred, with hope in your story? I've never read an author who does this so flawlessly before. What I like about Emily's questions is she combines a compliment with every question. And that's great practice, everyone.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Emily. Please keep it up.
I think you have to find a balance between reality and what you want to have happen and what you're creating, in order for it to be accessible again, but also because it's contemporary, and it would be a disservice for me to not include something that we are experiencing. And I mean, COVID is like mentioned once or twice, I think, and it's like not over. It's just something that you're living with, and I do think that will be our future. I mean, I wrote that a year ago, which is weird. So, but I think you have to kind of find the balance. Yeah, you have to really know what you have to throw in there and know what you don't need to keep in when you're doing Earth. But there are rules and there are limits, and you have to kind of find the balance between both, this fantasy world and all these beautiful planets and ours, which makes it sound really sad. But you just have to kind of make the rules and keep them.
Yeah. What about you, Andrea? Have you considered that at all? Because all your first 2 books were like futuristic sci-fi, so you weren't going in like in the present, obviously.
Yeah, I don't know, because like I don't know, with Rebel Wing, I had the luxury because that was my debut novel, so I had the luxury of working on that like way back in like 2016, probably, which was like a different kind of terrible, admittedly, but like not on this level. And then like Renegade Flight, I think I was writing right at the beginning of the pandemic, so I was like, we don't really know where this is going. I'll just like leave it be. This takes place so far in the future, like whatever. The answer is I really don't know. I'm working on a couple different projects right now. One of them would have a slightly more contemporary, like still fantastical, but somewhat more contemporary setting. So that's something I might end up wanting to discuss with my editor if it comes up. The other one, probably not so much, just because it stems. This is the one that's I think it's been announced on my Twitter. It's Kingdom of Without. It stems from like an alternate history. So I could wave my hand and kind of just say like, well, since this stems from a change in history that took place like over 100 years ago, maybe a society has developed in such a way that this outbreak wouldn't have happened. So in that one, like I don't see that being as relevant to that story, but the one that has a much more kind of like true to our world contemporary setting, it might be worth addressing. But yeah, no, it's something that I would definitely want to put a lot of thought and sensitivity into as well. So certainly not a decision I think I would come to like on my own. It's something I would want to talk about with like editors and second readers and so forth.
Also worth noting, I had to talk to my editor about that too. So you do have to take in a lot of, output and input and go, okay, what's going to be best here? And do I want to include this, or is that taking away the escapism from this book? So it is a lot to think about. But again, if you're doing contemporary, I think it's hard to just go, oh, it's not there. I don't know. Maybe it is. I have no idea.
Right. I feel like it would have been easier to do that like 2, even 1 year ago, but like now it's becoming like more and more of an elephant in the room if you're doing a more contemporary setting. So
yeah.
It's always just an interesting concept to discuss.
Yeah.
My idea so far, by the way, just from somebody who writes contemporary for my first book, I was like, well, in this world, Pride and Prejudice doesn't exist because it's a retelling of that. So also COVID doesn't either.
Okay, so you're using the same excuse that I used in Kingdom of Without, where I'm kind of like, well, it's an alternate history, so because like these things happened differently 100 years ago, like this is also different now.
Right. But I wrote that book I wrote it before the pandemic and I edited it over early pandemic, so we'll see what the decisions end up being for book 2. But it's something that everyone has to reckon with in just very interesting ways. Yeah. But it sounds like Alechia nailed it, so just everyone do what she did. Just pluck it from the script and toss it into your own manuscripts. But like with payment and stuff and proper accreditation.
Right. Add like a citation there with like a little footnote, just being like, by the way.
Yeah, like how when you use song lyrics, you need to pay for those. You should pay for using this particular world building trope to Alechia directly. We'll figure it out in post. Sunday Driver 79 asks, would you include the psychological? Oh, I love when we have friends on here. Would you include the psychological / mind connections with characters in future books too, including books that are maybe not part of this connected universe? They love this particular theme / trope.
I mean, maybe. I would. I mean, it really depends on what I get to write in the future. I think it would have to be in a different way, just like The Sound of Stars is different than the Kindred. I'd have to really consider that going forward. I'm not one who likes to do the same thing twice unless I can do it in a totally different way, because then I think I don't know, it's like competing against yourself. I don't know if you can do that. Like sometimes I'm really smart and then sometimes I'm not at all. So I don't want to do that. I think Kindred is probably one of the best mind connection things I've done. And I'm really proud of it. So if I did it in the future, it would look a different way, but I would totally consider doing it again.
You've set a high bar for yourself, but I also believe in you. So
thank you.
Well, you set a high bar with Sound of Stars too. So it's not like bar gets higher. It's just different bars like scattered around the room.
Right. Yeah. I really loved Ellie and Morris, but I also really loved Joy and Felix. So that just goes to show you can work your magic time again, Alechia.
I could try.
Although, speaking of Sound of Stars, this is a question that I have. I saw that in the paperback, there were some updated cultural references in Sound of Stars. Can you talk a little bit about that? I'm very curious about how that sort of worked and like what you chose to include in the new one.
So with the Sound of Stars, I wrote the Sound of Stars, I want to say in 2017, beginning of 2017. And some things were, like including the wizard school, back then was okay.
Right.
But then when you're coming out with your book and it's 2020 and you're like, oh, it's suddenly not okay. And that person's terrible. And I don't want to include that, but my book just published. So that's just, how it is. But then Inkyard is like, Alicia, would you like to change it? And I'm like, yes, please.
Nice.
So I was able to.
Inkyard. That is
great work, Inkyard.
To have in your
Snaps for Inkyard.
I was so happy. So happy they let me do that. So I got to update some of those and, take that out and go, oh, okay, now I put in Amari and the Night Brothers instead.
Fun.
And because I love that book. And I have an 8-year-old who loves that book. So it was really nice to kind of add that in and like just tinker a little bit and update some references that hopefully feel more inclusive to the audience. And I don't want to be connected to somebody who's, terrible in every possible way. So
yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Also, for Natalie, Amari and the Night Brothers could be a great rec for that 12-year-old. It reads into upper middle grade as well. So I mean,
and you can also definitely buy it from One More Page Books.
It's true. I've personally seen it on the shelf there many times. We love that book. We stock a lot of it.
It's so good. It's so good. And there's like a million middle grade books that I'm excited about. And if you want to rec for another one, which is coming out in May, Tracy Badua is coming out with Freddy versus the Family Curse, and it's adorable and the best. And I say you should get it and get it for everybody, and get it from One More Page.
All great ideas. Is that like the best thing about? I mean, I'm sure you also like love having your daughter for other reasons, but I feel like having an 8-year-old and get into middle grade must be like one of the best parts.
It's really great reading with her because she has very strong opinions about things.
I loved her reviews of the Kindred, by the way, where she was like, why does he have purple eyes on the cover?
Yeah, she went on a whole little rant and she was like, well, how do I get
purple eyes, Alicia?
Where do I get those from? Like, can I get them? And if he can get them, it makes sense that I can. I was like, no. She has a lot of questions about it. She's like, I don't know about the Kindred. I'll read that maybe in a few years. I'll read some of your other books sooner. Like, okay, let me just get on that for you.
Yeah. I love that. What else are you guys reading now? Like, what have you been enjoying that you want to brag about and chat If you haven't been able to read because your brain is broken, that's also okay.
My brain's a bit broken.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, mine is a little broken. I try not to ever read in the genre that I write because otherwise it'll do something to my brain and I'm like, oh, I can never write as good as this, so why do I even bother? And that's a real thing that happens to me. So I read a lot of adult rom-coms.
Yes.
The great genre. I've been wanting to get into reading more romance. I feel like it would spark joy in this dark.
Oh, Andrea, let One More Page guide you on this journey.
Oh, right. You and I should talk after this chat.
Yeah. We love
if you want recs though for like books that I would love to read and I'm planning on reading
that I can buy from One More Page.
Yes.
Yes. I have a lot. I think Jordan Fueco's Redemptor, it just came out recently, and it's the sequel to, oh my god,
I can picture the cover perfectly, which is very.
I can see it.
Yeah. Here, it's okay.
It was amazing, and I think you should check out both of her books.
Ray Bearer.
Why was that? That was like really hard for me to find. And I love Zoraida Cordova's everything, and Bethany Morrow is amazing. And I have like a list. JL's second book from Wings of Ebony and Ashes of Gold comes out next week. So hop to that. Cold the Night, Fast the Wolves is by Meg Long, and that's coming out soon too, I think next week. And the thing is, I realized that I had done a panel with her, and I kept calling it "Cold the Wolves, Fast the Night." And she just made faces every time we were doing this panel. She was like, and I was like, "It's fine."
That's hilarious. So now you're legally obligated to plug the book whenever you
have to, yeah, because I felt so bad.
It all worked out for her in the end. She should be thanking you for getting the name of the book wrong, because the guilt has driven up sales, clearly.
Oh, and Elise Bryan's book just came out today too. And
I have that one here.
I had been messing up with that one as well, where I was like, it's Happily Ever Afters too. And it is not. It's One True Loves, but I've been like plugging it as Happily Ever Afters for like all week. And so, definitely go get that one as well. It is a YA rom-com, and I think it's probably beautiful and full of all of the good stuff. And yeah.
Yeah, the cover is so cute for that one.
So cute.
A nice light, like a lilac.
Yeah, I feel like, I've been reading, I don't know, my brain is slightly broken, so I've been bad at finishing things lately, but I've been reading all over the place when I pick books up. Aside from the Kindred, of course, the last thing in YA speculative that I read and really loved was the Blaze Wrath games, which I actually got to do an event for with Paro, the author, as well, which was a really, it and its sequel, Dragon Blood Ring, were really fun, because it's it's another sort of contemporary-esque speculative YA, where it's our world, but there are wizards and dragons in it, and you can play this World Cup-esque sport on Dragonback, which is much more exciting than a normal World Cup.
Ideal, yes.
And Amparo, right? It's Amparo.
It's Amparo, yes, who is delightful, incidentally. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely would plug her books. She does, I don't know, she almost reminds me a little bit, her writing almost reminds me a little bit of yours, Alecia's, in that she also has this very fun, uplifting storytelling style where it's you just you feel good after you've read one of her books. And let's see, aside from YA, this is a book that I'm in the process of reading, and it's more adult science fiction, but Alexander Darwin did a series that starts with a book called The Combat Codes. I think it's getting a re-release at some point, but right now, I think it's available on Amazon and so forth. But what I, as a giant martial arts nerd, love about it is that it's kind of set in this world in which the politics of the world are determined by single combat, essentially, and they have these kind of fantasied up sci-fi MMA fighters who go up against each other to settle but to essentially settle world altering conflicts, which I thought was just such a cool concept. I'm fairly early in on the first book so far, but he's also a jiu-jitsu black belt, so and an MMA aficionado. So all of the fight scenes are incredibly well choreographed. So if you're an action nerd like me who loves martial arts and also is kind of a politics nerd, it's a great combination of
that's your whole situation.
Right? Yeah, I know. When I first found out about these books, I was like, oh no, it's somebody wrote books just for me.
It sounds like they're re-released, so we have a perfect opportunity to buy them from one more page.
There you go. But yeah, so that's what I'm reading on the adult side. I think.
Well, and before we go, because we only have a couple more minutes, but I do want to know what you guys have coming next.
Oh, yeah.
Plugs to do, what we're looking for, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, no, Alechia, I feel like you should kick that one off. Sorry.
I already forgot.
That's Andrea. Andrea first. Then
okay. All right. Lightning round. As I mentioned earlier, the next book that I have out is The Kingdom of Without. Originally slated for 2022. That might be moving to 2023. Stay tuned. But it is a cyberpunk heist novel with an ensemble cast set in a sort of futuristic world based on an alternate historical China in the city of Beijing. So that should be
so excited. It's going to be so good.
I cannot wait. I have your books on my shelf over there, so I'm
Andrea's books are the funniest in the world, everyone. If you need a good reason to read her books, they're great for all other reasons, but they are the funniest, voiciest of the sci-fi fantasy.
That is high praise coming from you.
And Alechia, have we given you enough time? Do we need to talk amongst ourselves?
Okay. I believe I have a anthology story coming out this year and Out There into the Queer Yonder.
Yes.
And that is in June, I think. I think it is.
Who knows at this point? Everything shifts.
It is shifting. That's the reason.
Right.
I have my middle grade debut next year in fall,
I'm so excited.
2023, which is called Just a Pinch of Magic. And
Love
it
the
is
name. What a good title.
foodie fantasy fun. And it is really, really great. And then I also have an anthology coming out then too, but I don't know exactly the date for that yet. And that's it. That's all I can talk about.
Food-based middle grade is like my apps. I love a food-based middle grade. I inhale them as if they themselves are snacks. So
my daughter loves them too. So it's like I think I finally cracked it, and I finally made the book that she's gonna like.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it is 6 o'clock or midnight for Alechia. Happy end of release day.
Thank you.
Yeah, seriously, way to be a trooper. Like,
yeah, but thank you both so much for joining us. This was so much fun. It's always so great to hear from both of you. You both speak so beautifully about like your books and hope and loneliness and everything great, and it just was a delight. So, any last words from our friends here?
No, thank you
to
so
Amanda
much.
for being the hostess here. Like, you always do such a great job running events. You and like the whole like One More Page team. So thank you for continuing to do this so well.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Andrea, as well. Thank you for asking me all these great questions.
No, Alechia, thank you. Like, I had the best time getting to chat with you. And when you do come back to the States, I will have to buy you dinner, and we will have to hang out properly.
Dinner and raisinets.
I would love that.
Yes.
And raisinets. Thank you.
Also, one of our commenters said that out there is June 7th. So thank you, BKNC 1516.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Natalie Lacasilva's my agent, for telling me spring 2023. Thank you.
Good work, Natalie.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of our amazing audience members. If you want to watch this, it'll be posted on YouTube afterwards, so you can keep an eye on that. You can buy both of our authors' books. The links are in the comments. And keep an eye on our page for our slate of spring, winter, whatever season we're in now. I don't know. Events coming up. And stay safe and read everything.
Thank you all.
Buy from One More Page.
Yes, read everything, but buy from One More Page first. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.